Good evening. Welcome to Tuesday, March 10th, 2020 meeting of the Woodbridge Traffic Authority. Are there any comments from the public or correspondence? That item that you sent to me, is that part of traffic or?
It just came in today, so we'll...
Next time.
Yeah, we'll have, it might not have to reach that one yet.
Okay. First traffic matter is the Grouse Lane Fraser Drive.
Yeah, so at the end of last year, we began discussing a resident's request for additional traffic control signage in the area of Grouse Lane and Fraser Drive. And as a result, there was a traffic study conducted, and during the January meeting of the board, the traffic authority decided against the installation of additional stop signs at that intersection for posting of the speed limit signs. Following that, the deputy chief met with the traffic committee regarding the issue, and Chris Dickerson is here on behalf of the traffic committee to discuss it with the board.
Thanks.
Mind if I pull a chair up?
Please.
So we did review it and reviewed the traffic study that was done, and the traffic study concluded that it really wasn't necessary to put stop signs at this intersection. But looking at it a little bit more closely, we thought it might be a good idea to recommend putting the stop signs there. And there's a couple of reasons. There's a lot of children in the neighborhood, and the neighbors are complaining about people speeding. The reality is the people who are speeding are the neighbors. They're their neighbors. So it's difficult. We've had issues in the past where we've had neighbors come in and complain about speeding, and they'll readily admit it's their neighbors. So we've had them send letters to the neighbors and ask them to slow down, and that's been somewhat effective. But in this situation, we felt like it was reasonable to put the 2 additional stop signs there because it doesn't impact actually anybody else in town. It only impacts the neighborhood and the neighbors. So it is under the purview of the traffic authority to do that. You don't have to get state approval for this. And we felt like, based on the concerns of the parents and the amount of children in the neighborhood, it makes sense to put the 2 stop signs up there, and hopefully it'll get people to be a little bit more aware of the speed and concern of the children in the neighborhood.
A couple of questions. How many kids? You say a lot of kids. Like 50 or like
it's not
3? Right.
But it's
somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between.
And their ages approximately, if you know.
I'm just looking to see if she noted that. Well, one family, there's 3 children, just one of the families. I know another family on the street has a couple of kids. Looking at people on the email, I know that the other people will have a couple of kids each. So it's probably a fair number
Like
of children.
9 to 12.
I would say probably somewhere in that range.
And what are their ages?
The ones in the email here are 12 and 7. I happen to know another person that lives there. These kids are teenagers now. They're younger teenagers, so they're not driving yet. You're going to have kids, I think kids in a neighborhood like that are going to be on bicycles because they feel safer. I grew up on Amity Road. We never rode our bikes when we were little kids on Amity Road because it wasn't safe. But when you're not in that sort of a neighborhood, you get the feeling of safety because it's not a cut-through street. It's 2 cul-de-sacs. So there's a sense, almost like sense of safety for on the part of the children. That's not really there because people do speed on all these roads.
It's 4 families that are represented?
The email I received had 4 different families, yes, but there's a lot of other families in the neighborhood.
But the 4?
Those are the 4 that were on the email.
You know, I noticed this morning on my little street, Richard Sweet Drive, which is also kind of cul-de-sac, you know, to cut through, we have a 35-mile-an-hour stop sign, and I think it's 35, right? Would that be right?
But it's 25.
Maybe it's 25. Maybe I go 35. Don't tell the police commission this. Take that off. But it does slow people down. I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. And I remember when we talked about this before in the study, it sounded like there just wasn't enough going on.
Yeah.
But I was asking the ages because the teens will be driving soon. That's scary. But I was also thinking younger kids are going to be there for another 10 years. So, and then there's going to be turnover.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I just wanted to get the lay of the land.
Usually when we have complaints that come to our committee, we try to weigh up how's it going to impact people outside the neighborhood?
Yeah.
How does it impact people in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Is it warranted? And sometimes we say we don't think it's warranted.
Right.
A couple of different neighborhoods, people came through and asked for things like this. We didn't feel like it was warranted. We felt like it was a little bit more burdensome on the neighbors, other neighbors, but not the ones that were making the complaint. In this case, we feel like because it's a fairly small neighborhood, it's going to really impact just that neighborhood.
What's the cost of 2 signs?
It's something the public works do.
It's not exorbitant, I'm
It's
guessing.
not.
And the thing is also precedent.
Yeah.
Like every neighborhood's now gonna want to have things.
And that's one of the things that we do to try to take some pressure off the police commissions, field these complaints first,
Right.
so that you don't have to deal with
Right.
this.
Right.
And there's been times when people have come in and we've said, no, it doesn't warrant a stop sign.
Right, right.
Other times people come in and said, yeah, we should probably do something with,
Yeah.
with traffic.
The suggestion makes sense to make peace in the neighborhood. The only, I guess, tension we have is there are prior requests that were made that we had a traffic study done. And we need to grant the request based on the traffic study felt. And there's sometimes where I think there was even a suggestion to do it and we chose not to do it, but for different reasons. That's the only concern that I can see is that that precedent may be problematic if the traffic study doesn't recommend it. I certainly appreciate the time and your suggestion. It makes sense. I mean, we have had some neighborhood issues in the past that were challenging because, it was going to impact someone.
Yeah.
So that's the hard decision, is do we make that decision knowing that the precedent that it may set?
And again, what we do is we look at these on a case-by-case basis, and based on, again, circumstances like this, we'll maybe recommend one way versus another. We had neighborhood complaints about Hunting Hill, Barbary Lane, that area, and they were looking for some additional stop signs, and we said we don't think that's warranted because it would negatively impact people coming through that neighborhood from different areas. So we do look at that and try to make decisions based on the specific instance. And most times it does correlate with the traffic studies that are done.
And we did put a speed sign, but not the stop signs, is that what we did?
No speed signs, no.
Neither, nothing, okay, right, okay.
I called the state, talked to them. Off the record, they recommended to go this route, that the traffic authority had the authority to place those, and many towns do provide stop signs for areas like this where you have a town road adjacent to another town road. So there's no impact on the state roads at all. And the only thing that the state indicated was that if you did in fact put the stop sign, and I told Chris about this, that we would have to monitor. Because they go by certain criteria, accident volume, and things like that, and speeds if we record them. And if we came back and found out that, speeds were increasing and we had more accidents at that location, then we would have to revisit it. But that would be the same as if we would put a stop sign there.
We'd have to monitor the fashion.
Monitor it for, like you said, if we put a stop sign at those 2 locations and we had an increase in accidents because of the stop signs, we would have to revisit them. That was the only concern that the state had.
To me, I guess the district doesn't have a
Negative.
How often does that happen, more accidents after a stop sign? Have you seen that?
No, but
Theory.
I could use an example, Bradley Road. One of the reasons that the state wouldn't approve a stoplight on Bradley Road was due to the matrix of the cars coming down Amity Road could cause, or they thought would cause, more rear-end accidents. They don't have any rear-end accidents at that location.
Oh.
And that was one of the negative factors
What happened to
associated
rear
with that.
accidents where? Bradley and Amity?
In Amity.
I was rear-ended there.
Did you report it to the police?
The police, okay, I was sitting on Amity.
But they would,
when you turn left on
one of the
Bradley,
state's
and I was
reasoning
rear-ended.
was that it would increase the accidents because you had to stop.
Frank, are you concerned about the precedent of granting a stop sign when the traffic study recommended?
Would it be something we'd have to consider going forward? I don't know if there's a way we could say we do this based on the criteria and the input from from the neighbors in that area, but we would be doing it without precedent.
You can't do that.
You know, but
It might maybe an uptick in requests, so you would feel.
Well, I'm just thinking, you know, we had denied other requests.
Yeah.
Similar situations in the past, you know, within the last year.
This will encourage people to come down. Right?
What do you think?
I think it depends which route we want to go. I think it would, you know, if it doesn't have a negative impact on traffic, and it has positive result on slowing people down, it'll certainly have a positive effect on the residents in that area.
Here's another question. If there's,
I think that they have recommended it, and I think that since there is no negative impact, I really don't have an issue with it.
It's not the suggestion, it's just that one caveat of,
but
traffic
let's
study.
take that caveat seriously. If there's an uptick in requests because of this, how many neighborhoods like that are there? Do we have any idea, you know, where it's cul-de-sac-y, it impacts no one else, it's not an Amity Bradley? Are there a dozen or 55 in Woodbridge? I bet there's not.
Probably closer to a dozen than 55. I'll bet
Exactly.
there is a dozen. And we've had people come in from neighborhoods like that and ask for different things. And at different times, you know, we've talked about putting, you know, more enforcement there, put a speed trailer out there, and what we determine is it's the neighbors that are doing the speed. You know, one of the challenges is that people just drive much faster. As they get older, I think they drive faster. You know, so how do we slow them down? One of the most successful things that we've recommended was the speed humps on Landon Street. And my business is right there. And it has changed the entire complexion of that street. That street was a racetrack cut through. And now, when you turn onto the street in either direction, people slow down. And I watch them slow down. And it changes how they drive down the street. It's a dramatic change.
They work, there's no question about it.
So I think things like this will help change a complexion of a neighborhood, slow things down for people. It's like a little bit of a wake-up call to them when they see a stop sign. As opposed to just whipping through a neighborhood.
And your perception of the people speeding are the people who live on the street?
Because nobody else would go on that street, on those streets. They're cul-de-sacs.
No, I know the street well.
Yeah.
So it's people who actually live there, not visitors, not.
Mainly people that.
So why not a speed bump?
They're way more expensive than the stop signs.
But
By
they're harder to ignore.
a factor of 100, I'm sure.
But they're much harder to ignore,
Speed humps,
yeah.
they are. But like I said, they're way more expensive. I think they're in the tens of thousands of dollars versus the small hundreds of dollars for stop signs. So it's much, much bigger. And we've had a lot of requests for speed humps since we put them on Lincoln Street. All over town. Everybody
That
wants
precedent
those.
business.
And you know what? You're right. And we haven't come in to ask for any more yet. So we've been keeping that at bay.
I mean, the dynamics here are much different than, say, using Hunting Hill and Barberry. The request that came, they wanted the speed decrease, but there wasn't the issue about children on the road and some of the other factors. They actually requested some other things that we couldn't provide for them. They wanted, well, we didn't approve the speed limit signs, so there was no need for that. They wanted a bus stop sign, because all the kids get on at one location, and we couldn't provide that. And this was kind of when we revisited it at the last one. They'd come to the traffic committee meeting with their concerns, and it was kind of a way for the traffic committee to come to you and say, hey, look at this. Let's give a little to the town where we think it's needed. And then when I called the state, and they said it's totally up to the traffic authority. It just seemed like the right thing for Chris to do, to come here and ask for your approval.
I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
I move that we vote to put in 2 stop signs, that's what the request is, right, at the Grouse Lane Fraser Drive intersection.
is there a second? Any discussion?
So just to clarify, because I missed the first, so there'd be one right at the end of Fraser,
There is one existing.
so where are the 2 signs going?
The streets that come in to the T intersection there. One of them is actually, I believe, Fraser. Is it Fraser Grouse that comes in and veers right? So it would basically, people would stop at that T intersection from
different than some of the other scenarios where we denied it based on a traffic study. So that, to me, is a very different scenario than we've dealt with.
Yeah, we try our best to do things so that it takes items off your plate. You've got a lot to deal with. We're happy to do that.
All those in favor?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time and
Thank
effort.
you.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
We'll revisit that other issue.
Okay, sounds good.
The next item on the agenda is the Milford Prevention Council.
So we received a request from the Milford Prevention Council regarding their 9th annual Ride for Hope charity motorcycle fundraising ride. We've entertained their request for the past several years now. The goal, if they're a nonprofit organization, is aimed at reducing underage drinking and substance abuse in youth. The ride is scheduled for Sunday, June 7th, begins in Milford at 10, concludes by 12:30, and the route of travel through Woodbridge is Racebrook Road from Orange down to Rimmon Road, where it makes a left and heads into Seymour, and then later on turns around and comes back that same route. I'm just looking for the traffic authority's approval once again, so they could go ahead and that would enable them to apply for their state DOT permits for that.
Motion to approve the Ride for Hope.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Baldwin Road.
Update on the Baldwin Road traffic study. Subsequent to the findings of the traffic study that was conducted at the end of last year, as you know, the state approved the lowering of the speed limit for the entire length of Ball Road from 35 to 30 miles per hour. I just want to let the board know the final step of that process was done January 16th. All the signage was posted and made it effective, and Town Hall actually posted on the website and advertising, so the public's aware of that. And there were some letters of thanks from the resident in the area that was kind of the impetus for that. And those letters of thanks are there for you to review. But it was much appreciated. She called, she wrote, and she thanked everybody for the efforts. Next thing we had was a request from the Bethwood Baseball League to close the road for their opening day events, which will be held on Saturday, April 25th. As usual, they hold their opening day ceremonies on the town green out in front here of the town hall. They plan to start around 8. They usually wrap everything up by 12:30, and customarily they close off Meeting House Lane for pedestrian safety from the area near the library right through the intersection of Center Road there. They filed the application with the town for special event use of the town green, and they're just seeking the traffic authority's approval for that temporary road closure for 4 hours or so.
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
I move to close the road during a baseball event.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
What date is that, Chief?
April 25th.
Correct, yes, Saturday, April 25th.
April 25th is a Saturday.
Saturday, April 25th, yeah, that's. The next topic we had was pertains to the entrance to the Fitzgerald property, community gardens, actually way over here on Beecher Road. At the February 12th meeting of the Board of Selectmen, the board approved the construction of an additional 24 new parking spaces in the lot there, the parking area. It was the consensus of the Board of Selectmen that these additional parking spaces warranted a reconfiguration or widening of the entrance to the lot itself, or perhaps even a second driveway. So the Board of Selectmen asks for this matter to be considered by the traffic authority regarding possible public safety issues, and they were looking for a recommendation from the traffic authority regarding that as soon as possible. Based on that, I took time, I did a 3-year look back into the intersection there of the driveway, and there were no, in the last 3 years, there's been no accidents. The closest accident was down the street near Oak Hill Lane. So there was no traffic problems associated with the driveway entrance itself. And then I reached out to Warren Connors, the Public Works Director, to see what he might think about possible solutions. And he suggested the most practical solution would be just to leave the driveway where it was and make it a little bit wider so that it could accommodate 2 cars more readily than it does now. And the other possibility would be to make a second driveway, because of the property boundaries and such. If that was the case, it would have to be closer to, on Beecher, but closer to Center Road, and that would somewhat encroach on the upward grade when you come in from Beecher. So he was thinking that he really wasn't in favor of that, and I wasn't either at this point. So I agree with him that the most feasible thing to do would be to widen the driveway. But the only thing I want to bring up to the board, and I know that you're aware of it, but the traffic authorities is usually the scope of the traffic authority is to recommend, control signals, signage, and so forth, and marking the highways, and to make sure that all those signage and so forth are in compliance with regulations. In this case, there won't be any kind of signage or markings or anything. It's just strictly a widening or altering, modifying of the driveway itself. And usually the placement of the driveways, on town-owned property or commercial property, is usually done through a permit process or whatever, and reviewed like as zoning to make sure there's no inland wetlands or conservation or property line boundary disputes. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention for your consideration.
So they were looking for an answer from us, recommendation from us?
Yeah, they were looking for a recommendation of
We're widening the driveway.
for widening the driveway. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think we can do that. It's beyond the scope of our
for
authority.
widening the driveway or making an alternative.
We can't, I
driveway.
don't think we respond to that. That's beyond our authority to do.
Okay, I'll let Beth know that.
If our town council thinks otherwise, I'm sure
Okay.
they'll tell you.
So is this within the town council's authority?
No, but he would give a legal opinion.
No, I mean, so the Board of Selectmen would have the authority?
No, that would have to probably go through zoning. I mean, the town is exempt from a lot of the zoning requirements anyway on town property, so there's not go to the zoning either. Public Works, I would imagine, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, I would think that you're right, but you're gonna have to, I think you're correct, it's not a decision for us to make. They have other ways they can get that done, it's very simple for the Public Works Department then to go widen it. And so,
I appreciate that they're looking for our guidance, but we cannot provide it on this
So
issue.
I'll forward
but Jerry
the message.
can give an opinion.
Yes, he can.
Jerry can give an opinion.
This is all this one parking spaces, so it looks like.
Is it for that one?
Yes, that's it.
And the last topic of the traffic is the annual Woodbridge Road Race. It's coming up, the 39th annual Woodbridge Road Race on October 3rd from 8 to 12. They'll be using the standard route, Newton, Burn Swamp, and the North Keys, back down. As always, it's well-staffed, marked with signs and cones. We'll dedicate whatever personnel we could to assist with safety in that. And the rec department is looking for the permission of the traffic authority to hold their race, and that will enable them, like the other one, to go forward with their permitting process with the state.
I don't remember us shutting down so many roads in 1 month. This is a first. Is there a motion to grant authority for the
I'll make a
Woodbridge
motion
Road Race?
granting authority.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Is there a date on this, Frank?
October
Yeah,
3rd.
what is it?
October 3rd. You running?
They're well in advance. You are? You're running?
We've run it before together.
Oh, really?
So just asking.
Who wins?
You just told me.
Is there a motion to, it's 6:39, is there a motion to adjourn the Woodbridge Traffic Authority?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor? Unanimous. Good evening, welcome to the Woodbridge Board of Police Commissioners. It is 6:39. First item on the agenda is the swearing in. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Congratulations, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So you all remember that Steve, officially started, got hired in January, but he officially started February 13th. We have had a meeting last month. He's progressing really well. He's participating in a certified officer training period, familiarization period, and upon a successful completion of this, which we're thinking will be in the next few weeks, I'll be able to release them to, as part of our minimum manpower and staffing, but we've had all good reports and good comments and good reviews by the guys and his peers, so we're happy for him and wish him a long, safe and successful career with us here at the PD. And at this time, I'd like to ask the chairman to officially swear Steve in.
I'm not going to dare say that. No. Just raise your right hand.
Prolikus. Close. Very close.
I, Stephen Prolikus,
I, Stephen Prolikus,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and comply with the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I will support and comply with the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Connecticut,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Connecticut,
the charter, laws, and ordinances of the town of Woodbridge,
the charter, laws, and ordinances of the town of Woodbridge,
the rules and regulations of the Woodbridge Police Department,
the rules and regulations of the Woodbridge Police Department,
and the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics,
and the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
as police officer to the best of my ability.
as police officer to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, sir.
Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We're gonna have to pass this because we only had 3 people, Steve's not here.
Yeah, no, can't vote because
We'll table.
Right,
Okay.
so it's table next time. Janice, I thought the package that I had more than 1 set of minutes, but it was sent to me. Maybe I mixed them up with another month. Review the reports, financial report.
This was the financial report, and obviously we're 8 months through the fiscal year. Our overall operating budget, that's just a little bit above 63%. So overall, we remain right on target and actually just a fraction below where we should be at this point. And if you have any concerns, I can address any of the things that might stand out. See, I know the one that we discuss often is the overtime line, patrol overtime, and that correlates again with the vacancies that we have. And it's offset somewhat by the officer salary line.
Any questions? Any questions, guys?
Guess not.
Is there a motion to approve the financial report?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous? Chief, moving on to the activity report.
So moving on to the activity report. Kind of compiled January and February together. During those 2 months, we had 2 burglaries. One in January was on Country Club of Woodbridge property. It was an arrest made with that. It was in the afternoon, and there was two individuals trying to break into the garage in the back. And then in February, we had a daytime burglary on Route 69 in the area of Bradley Road. It was a forcible entry. It was during the day. It was actually on a weekend, on a Saturday, I believe. And that was a forcible entry into that house through a door, and jewelry and iPad were stolen. The significant thing was we had a several different larcenies and one throughout the month. Some of them were from some of the assisted living facilities, some items missing. There was one involving stolen mail. And there was an arrest made over at 264 Amity, one of the corporate parks. There were some laptops stolen out of an office there, and they were able to identify the suspect. And actually, the arrest has not been made yet, but the warrant's pending at court. For that, regarding the thefts from motor vehicles, we had 10 vehicles entered during the 2 months, but most of those happened, 8 of those were all in one night. That was on the night of the 27th. Spread throughout town. It's the same problem that a lot of the communities are having. Ours have, other than that one night, that they've really slowed down for us, so that was good as far as that goes. We had a bank robbery again on the 24th at TD Bank at 128 Amity Road. And I'm happy to say with that they were able to identify the suspect. They found him all really happy later that week, and they were able to secure the warrant, and they did arrest on that this week. And I sent a press release on that. And we had 2 stolen vehicles. One was actually a stolen vehicle that was recovered. It was a stolen vehicle out of Camden that I'll talk about later with a couple of commendations and letters of recognition. And that was on the 26th. That was on the 18th of January, I'm sorry. And then on the 26th, the night of that, all those other car thefts, burglaries anyway, there's one stolen car from up on the Dogwood Circle area. And that vehicle is still outstanding.
That stolen one, was it one of these, like the keys were in the car kind of
Yes.
things?
Yeah. And actually, the majority of those, as usual, are the unlocked cars, unfortunately. Not all of them, but some of them. We did have one untimely death that occurred in January, and they were waiting toxicology reports on that. It did come back that was a fentanyl-related overdose on that one.
Accidental or not clear?
Well, it was, it was substance abuse kind of related issue. Accidental by illegal means, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's
It wasn't a suicide, was it?
no. And that was it on the criminal side.
Excuse me, why is the bank such a target? How many times has that bank been robbed? I mean,
Well, there was one just 2 months ago. The other one,
I'm saying, do they have a gift basket there, so when they come in, they just say, they have a gift ready to give them?
It's in close proximity to the highway.
Exactly.
Well, some of
The shopping
the people's
center
bank in
highway.
close proximity to the highway.
Well,
Just keep
for some
on
reason,
going
the
after
criminal
that.
mind gets attracted to that. That's
Wow.
not there.
Do you have a theory?
No, I don't have a theory. And I don't.
I have a theory.
You have a theory?
Yes, People's Bank has a tough line of defense when you walk in the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Maybe
I don't think that anyone's going to challenge that.
I get that. You're right. You have tough line of defense there. I think I got it.
So I had a question for you. On the monthly stats, it shows radar enforcement at 368. I'm trying to correlate that with the officer stats on radar.
I'm gonna actually.
Okay, yeah, he could probably clarify that.
Thanks.
Hopefully.
And that's something moving forward. We talked about that the other day. And we might want, so the way the monthly stats and the activity stats that Deputy talked about, that we've been providing, and it's kind of the way that they've been provided for probably decades, some of that stuff. And so it might be a good time to address a different way to.
I don't think it's a fair representation of what the officers do.
It's true, it doesn't.
Well, I'm
It's
just trying to,
misleading.
I'm gonna give you a little bit more information than than I normally do. Kind of give you an idea of, maybe you can rationalize time spent by the officers. Is Rick, you want to just go ready?
Yeah, so we'll just go into the.
Yeah, I mean, some of our statistics, we're talking about January and February, so you get a little bit of a variation. In January, we had 145 motor vehicle stops. by the officers each shift, for all the shifts. In February, we had 134 stops.
Where are they?
I'm taking, well,
They're not
figures
listed.
are on the
What are they called
statistics.
here?
Motor vehicle stops.
Total stops in the
Total
bottom.
Total
stops, and
stop.
at the bottom.
Thank you.
Until January.
As a result of those stops in January, the 145 stops, 2 resulted in felony arrest, 13 misdemeanor arrests. And during that period, the officers did we're talking about January, 368 radar enforcements. Now, when they do a radar enforcement, it doesn't necessarily say they're gonna stop and give a person a ticket for radar, all right? But each officer is assigned 2 radar details each shift. So if it's
But
time
what does that
permitting,
mean?
they'll run radar twice. And based on complaints that we receive, problem areas that we have.
What do you mean they'll run radar? Say what, I'm
They'll
sorry.
go out there and they'll do a radar detail, which will have the radar on.
area.
And they'll stop
This
cars
is-
associated with the speed of the cars.
Okay.
All right.
They
The
turn
radar.
the radar in their car,
Correct.
and they watch me speeding down Avenue
Correct.
Road and they stop me. Okay, thank you.
And they'll stop you based on either a motor vehicle violation or the radar that they're picking up on the radar. But they might necessarily give you a ticket for speeding. They may give you a ticket for another violation that you have. Your car might be unregistered, but you can realize that they're stopping in January 145 cars. They're
And
making
when
a
you
stop.
say each officer, what time frame? You said like they do it for an hour? Like what, when you say they each do?
Usually it's between a half an hour and an hour, an officer will.
So a detail is a period of time, or
Correct?
a detail, you said radar detail?
Is a period of time.
Okay.
All right.
I still haven't found the 145.
Here,
So that's
traffic
Traffic
stops.
stop, oh.
That's associated with motor vehicle stops, and I hopefully that tells you what each officer is doing. I mean, each officer is assigned 2 radars each shift, all 3 shifts. So they'll
And
go
it's
out
up
there
to
and they'll
them
run there
when
for
they
half
do
an
it.
hour to an hour, and they'll run radar. So they're taking up that particular period of time. All right. The officers are also during the month of January, they're assigned 2 D-runs each shift. All right. In January,
What's a D-run?
a D-run is I'm going to explain that. A D-run it could either be a commercial establishment or it could be a residential establishment or a residential area based on complaints that we get, problem areas that we have, say the larcenies with the break-ins in the cars. We know that that we have break-ins in the cars during those periods. The officer will be assigned to say if we're having them on North Racebrook Road, we'll assign a D-run to that area. And the
So
D-run
it's
is associated
before
with North
anything has
Racebrook.
happened, it's
Right, so
pre-crime.
it's the D stands for deterrent.
Got it.
Deterrent patrol.
The office of pre-crime.
Correct. Now, you have to understand that during the 7 to 3 and the 3 to 11 shift, they're all residential deterrent runs. All right, that an officer is assigned. During the midnight shift, it's called the commercial D-run. So it's commercial establishments from 11 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning. And we each get assigned 2 of those. All right, so the month of January, there was 1,275 D-runs. And a D-run can take up from a half an hour to 45 minutes to an hour.
And who decides who's doing what, do you run and where each?
It's usually the supervisor on that shift.
So does that
Or-
require a call, or is that just,
Pardon?
does that require?
No, it's they're standing assignments.
So standing assignments for the officers. And hopefully this is answering your question, is what are the officers doing out there? What takes up their
These
time?
officer stats do not reflect.
So if you have a D-run, does that mean you're driving through?
Correct. The areas where, we've gotten complaints. So if I got a complaint tonight that, let's use North Racebrook Road, for instance, we're having problems with cars going through that location. Certainly we would want officers to check in that area at night. So that's where we would send them. If we don't have areas that are problem areas, we just where the supervisor assigns them. But you have to understand, they're assigned 2 details each shift. Time permitting, they take care of those. So you understand the activity.
Okay. Yeah. So is it 2 D runs per shift or?
2 D-runs per shift per officer,
Okay,
2 radar details per
Per
shift
officer.
per officer.
okay.
So if you have 2 officers working, you're getting 4 details. Or if you get 3 officers, you're getting 6 details. That's just the D-runs. Then you're getting the same amount as when you have the radar details as well. So these are assignments that the officers take. This is time spent that's assigned to them, over and beyond their actual calls that they have to respond to.
There's additional, besides those, I get what the deputies portraying the 2 D-runs here, 2 D-runs there, 2 D-runs this shift. But there's, in addition to all those D-runs and the radar D-runs, there's also standing details at different locations throughout towns, schools, places of worship, that are in addition to all that. It's not just those things.
No, absolutely. But these are just standard deterrent patrols and radar details that are assigned to each officer
So
each shift.
it's the officer activity statistics doesn't reflect these standard things, it only reflects additional things. That's why everything, like, there's so many zeros and tiny numbers. They're actually doing a lot of stuff that we haven't documented it on this sheet,
It doesn't reflect in the D-run itself.
or the radar or anything like that.
What you're saying is the total number of all those assignments that were done, but not per
No,
officer.
this is
It's
not,
broken down.
no, this doesn't
So-
reflect total assignment. This, because, you get a lot of officers where there were 0, 0, 0, and so I don't think this reflects the.
Well, that's on that one, that's the motor vehicle, and on the other one,
That's
that's
just
just
motor
monthly
vehicle.
statistics.
This is motor vehicle.
That's just really motor vehicle and a few criminal
So
charges.
The only statistic that I gave you that's on
It needs to
that.
be labeled properly. It says officer activity statistics. It doesn't say motor,
Right.
it needs a little better labeling, because I think one of the
Below
confusions.
that, it says radar, motor vehicle, written warnings. So we'll come up with a system to.
So every shift for
But I
every
think
officer.
before you even be able to look at the statistic sheet, you have to understand, like what I'm trying to do tonight is you have to understand what the officers actually do. All right, when you see in the statistics that there's D-runs and there's 475 D-runs that are run during the month of January, you have to know that each officer is assigned 2 of those each night. And they're spending between a half an hour and an hour on each one of those
So
details.
where would that be reflected on here? If this
But
is
it doesn't show in that.
at all? Okay.
You could take,
So when it says motor
because I
vehicle,
sat
it
down
doesn't
with,
talk about D-runs or anything.
I sat down with our IT person, you could actually take,
This particular sheet
No,
is
or just
yes,
this column of the sheet.
Most of that's motor vehicle, and then there's the 2 criminal.
misdemeanor and felony.
So every shift of every officer has about 3 to 4 hours of activity that's not reflected on this sheet.
correct. The hours are not reflecting on that. I sat down with our IT person to try to determine how we could put this in a different format so it would be understandable. And he said it probably would be, if you ran it out on the computer, it would probably be about 200 pages per officer. Because it's just, for the month. Because, you're getting, so much volume of information. So we have to come up with some type of, that
A
you
system.
as the layperson can understand.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
can understand what the officers are doing
Yeah.
and how much time is actually spent.
Yeah.
Right, all right, so year-to-date, we have 2,486 D-runs, is that right?
Correct.
So the 2,486 D-runs, in terms of time spent, would be an average of what? Per-
About 45 minutes. Let's be conservative and make it 30 minutes. So you take that 30
Half
minutes.
hour,
A month is
30 minutes.
Wouldn't that be
this one.
safe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could,
I mean, it depends.
I haven't
Some,
happened to
some
that.
areas are shorter, some are longer.
Okay, I'm not asking for an exact, I'm just saying, if I've got 2,500 D-runs, how many hours am I talking about? So we're talking about 1,200 hours, 1,250 hours?
yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Hold on a second.
Well, that's significant.
That's just 2 assignments. For sure.
Okay.
So each one of these represents 4 hours.
I'm sorry?
Each one of these D-runs is 4 hours.
No,
No.
2 hours.
no.
No, we just
Some are,
used
some
an
are,
average
some are
of 30
20 minutes, some are, could be an hour.
No, it just-
It depends on
Just
what
an average
area,
of 30 minutes.
what's going on, yeah.
So it adds up to a lot of time, okay.
So we'll talk about how we're going to adjust that, because it's unfairly represents what they do.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with
I mean, I had a lot of other information. It's probably something that we could do at another meeting and break it down so you totally understand it.
How do other police departments do it? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There must be a coherent way to.
I don't think there is any police work.
No,
I think the big departments don't break it down by office, they break it down by shift and
I see.
sector within a shift. It's not done that way.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's you, I mean, and it's you being able to understand that, you know, when you see a D run and you see that there's, you know, 1,275 of them, each one of those is taking the 30 minutes.
I think
You add
it's
that
an average 30 minutes.
The average. But not to labor this, you know, I just wanted to give you an idea beyond the regular assignments. We did have 2 fatals the last 2 months. All right, we had one. Ironically, we had one in January on the 19th of January, and we had another one on February on the 19th of February. All right, but I wanted to give you an idea. Just the fatal in January was on Litchfield Turpin and Downs Road. Some of the information that's got to be taken in the reports that have to be done. Sergeant Scott and Officer Leo Capazzo had to do the notification that night.
When you say fatal use, that's a shorthand for fatal motor vehicle accident.
I'm sorry?
Yes. Short, yes.
And this is who was involved in that. John Calabrese had to do the initial report. I mean, obviously the fire department was out there. Mike Leslie had to had to represent the town at the autopsy and had to make sure that the cell phone got to the FBI for assist in getting the information off of that. Officer Rizzuti was the accident investigator that had to put the whole investigation together, and we were assisted by the state police for measurements and mapping of the incident. The same thing on February 19th. We had an individual that was killed on Northrop Road at Pine Hill Road. Officer Lentz did a report and a supplement on it. Matt Iannucci and Mike Leslie had to do the notification. The family notification and do a report associated with that. Scene photography was done by Mike Leslie. He again represented the department at the autopsy. And these are all this is very, very time consuming stuff that takes over. It's not just over that particular day, it's days after the incident. We had having Sonia come in, and their detectives did the scene measurements and the mapping of the scene, because right now the state police, unless it's a major incident, will not come out and assist us. So actually the chief is probably going to discuss it, is we're going to be putting together a unit, so several times we'll have the availability. Because that morning when we had this, we had trouble finding people that could, or any department that could assist us in doing the measurements and the mapping. Nobody had, some people had the mapping capabilities but didn't have the officers that were, you know, capable of doing it. Some had the officers to do it but didn't have the equipment to do it with. Ours, our accident investigator was on vacation. So it becomes very difficult. Just another issue, we had 2 family disputes during the month of February. One resulted in an arrest. Now this is a family dispute. Possession of controlled substance, interfering with an officer, disorderly conduct, and assault third. The other one was a family dispute where there was no arrest made, but there was a voluntary committal for evaluation. During the month of February and January, mental health issues. We had 7 committals. We had 10 overall, 7 committals, 2 voluntary, and one was a daughter that wasn't taking her meds, and they were able to handle it without no action. And these are reports that are taking an awful lot of time for the officers. If we computed that into there, and you add that with the time, I mean, the officers have a lot to do during their periods of, if they're on the road. I just took several of the ones that take a considerable amount of time. And then we're asking them when they're not doing anything to do more motor vehicle. And actually, the motor vehicle is up to where I would think that we consider, very acceptable, and the officers out there doing a good job.
So say we're cruising together, and I mean, we're both on duty or something, and we've done all our D-runs and our radar and stuff like that, and we pull over and have a coffee and a donut. We're playing solitaire, 'cause I go running a lot, and I see a lot of Woodbridge police, 2 of them pulled over. They have their laptops out, they're playing solitaire, they're having a coffee and a donut. And I think that's okay, because they're busy and they need a break. But then, when they are done with their break, do they call in for what's my next assignment? Like, how do they, you know, because sometimes they're kind of a long time, and sometimes they're on a side street just hanging, and I might run by and say hello or something, but they're there a while. So, like, what's the protocol?
Mike, can I? Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, just my response to that is, if you see somebody for a long time and it concerns you, let us know and we'll look into why they're there. But sometimes you might see someone parked at a certain area and sometimes they're writing a report. I mean, I don't know about playing solitaire.
I go up to them and I see solitaire and, right.
I think that's
No,
a
I'm
fair
not,
portrayal. But,
yeah.
but you know, and sometimes people see 2 officers side by side and they might think that they're, you know, the perception could be that they're goofing off, but if the truth of it could be that maybe they're discussing a case or, you know, or whatever. But
Obviously, that's true, but obviously you can tell I hang around when I'm running in these neighborhoods, and sometimes it looks like there's a lot of downtime. Downtime's great, we all need our breaks. But if they are done with their break, do they call in and get another assignment? Like, how do they manage their time?
they respond to calls as they come in, calls for service. We can't, we don't know when they're going to get a call. But other than that, they have some designated times, like the D-runs that the deputy was saying. Some have times, some don't have times, but they have to monitor their time so they can get all those different assignments.
So there's a lot of independence, how they monitor their time.
There's some independence. It depends. Some days there's no independence because they're busy.
Right.
They have lengthy calls or call after call after call, or they're short-staffed or whatever. So there's a lot of different factors that come into play with that.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the activity report?
Oh, second.
It's really good to take time looking at it like this.
All those in favor? Aye, okay. Report of the chief.
On February 29th, two members of the department represented us at the Connecticut Special Olympics Penguin Plunge fundraiser. And I just wanted to formally bring that to your attention and formally recognize and thank them for that. It was also Brian Pedalino and also Carl Rodriguez Perez. They took the icy plunge into the cold waters, Crystal Lake in Middletown.
You two didn't do it?
I was going to ask the same thing.
I was busy.
Yeah. Are you supposed to lead from
Supported them, encouraged them.
Lead by example.
Sure, encouragement.
next year?
We're going to recognize them.
I'm the oldest out of the
I just wanted to give you an update on where we're at with IT. Effective at the end of this fiscal year, at the end of June, the town is pretty much going to cease using the high school to service the IT needs for townwide and for us at the police department. It appears that we're going in a new direction with another company in place of Amity, and that company already works as a consultant and works with Amity, doing a lot of their work and backing them up. And they're also affiliated with the town already because, as you know, we were doing that. The town's doing the 3-phase infrastructure upgrade of the IT services, and they've completed the first phase, which is the town hall portion of it, and the second phase is supposedly going to start here right shortly after the beginning of the fiscal year. If all goes well, budget-wise, that's where we're going with that. And the focus of our upgrade here, just so everybody's on board with that, is they're going to clean up all the existing data and cabling and that we have here. There's a lot of old wiring and stuff that needs to be changed. They're going to be doing a fiber upgrades from the existing servers, which are adjacent to the administrative offices. It's all going to be moved out to the radio shelter, climate controlled building in the back here. They're going to do all new switching, a lot of other things. We're going to finally upgrade all the servers to Microsoft 2019. And a big thing that we're going to be doing, that once that all gets done, that'll allow Next Gen to have the capability to upgrade to their to their most recent versions of everything they had up till now. They weren't able to do that because the system that we have wouldn't support that. So as I said, that work's supposed to start here at the PD shortly after July 1st. And also with this new company, they're going to be providing us 24/7, 365 support for services for the desktop and the network. The benefit with this new company is that they have a certified technician that is able to service the law enforcement community, that has all the clearances for all that. He's actually a retired police officer from one of the nearby cities. He's worked with them for years, and he's already going into a lot of the other municipalities and doing work for them, on an hourly basis. So as we would need him, we could bring him in. So that's the plan with that.
So that consultant, the former officer, has all the certifications, he's got all the clearances that are necessary to...
He does. They have someone that has a lot of those clearances, yeah. So the goal is that EMD wasn't able to do some of that stuff. They just didn't have the staffing or the clearances or the ability to do some of that stuff, like the body cameras and the car videos and things like that. They were more desktop network driven. And so this will be another component that this company will offer, and it'll be a resource that our person assigned to IT could coordinate more with them and let them do a lot of that work, and hopefully take some of the burden off of them and free them up more than we've been able to do so far with that.
How are you contracted? Is it on a job per basis?
I'm sorry?
Is it an overall contract with a listing to accomplish all these, or is it being done on a...
It's going, so they're going to, they have a set plan for all the infrastructure part, and then there's a set plan for the service and problems that might arise with the service stuff. But all the other work is, we'll have blocks of hours, and we'll be able to use that. And I guess the plan is after 6 months to reevaluate and see how it's working, because they don't really know what, when the Amity came, they didn't know what they were getting into until they actually saw it. So that's what we're trying to
I'm good.
evaluate with that. Yep.
Thank you, Frank.
There was a letter that came out to the first selectman recently. I just wanted to share it with you, and it kind of clarifies some of the concerns. I think there were some discussions about the UI being reimbursed during storm coverage and overtime. Who's supposed to pay for that? And the long and short of it was, I'll just read this a couple sentences to you. But during emergency restoration events, municipalities frequently call upon their police force or emergency personnel to protect the safety and public health as downed power lines and storm conditions pose a threat to the residents. Emergency response services are a traditional government function funded by taxpayers, and UI is not legally required to reimburse a municipality for public safety or emergency response services during a declared state of emergency or an emergency restoration event. So that's the problems we had if it's pretty much the premise that the UI has been working with, and the way it's been going, if it's an act of God or a weather-related event, somebody has to be there for public safety. So the police and the fire are there, and it's incumbent on us to fund it for that. They'll fund road work and maintenance work and all that stuff. Storm-wise and weather-related things, they don't. So it's just a clarification. It's kind of been in place for a couple of years now, but they have to send a letter out. I think Beth got it, but I think it went to all the municipalities just as a point of clarification.
So it changed a couple of years ago?
Or changed or got more stringent on their end. Before they didn't question it, years back they pretty much didn't question it, and they would sign off on it, and then they started tightening their belts and not trying to watch their customer rates and payments, so they get away with it. Yeah. And in the near future, we're in the process of partnering with the Ring camera doorbell system that allows us to engage the community more so with that. It's been very common that seems like more and more people are getting those. Ring's been affiliated with the Connecticut Police Chiefs Association for the last couple of years now. And the main goal, I guess, of their collaboration with us is just to give us another platform to communicate.
Wait, what is it?
The Ring doorbell system, it's the cameras that people have in their doorbells.
Yeah, okay.
Ring is the company.
I see.
And they're kind of going nationwide with doorbell cameras and all kinds of
So we're gonna,
surveillance cameras. Well, what they developed a platform, it's a law enforcement only platform, which we could have access to people sharing information if they want to. We have no access
so
to
I
the
can
cameras.
put one in and say, I want you in on this, and like ring you in at a sort of.
Right, or we could
I see.
put out a request to people in that area, and if they want to submit any kind of video or anything they could. If they don't want to, they don't have to.
And you could do it
If they
for
want to
time
remain
limit?
anonymous, that's fine. We have no
Like
way
if
of
I say
knowing
I'm
who it is.
gonna be away for a month, can I dial you into my ring?
No, not for that, but if there's a problem in that area, we could reach out to them and say, we had a car burglar, we had something in your neighborhood, and we had a robbery or a fatal accident. Does anybody have Ring doorbells?
Yes.
You go through
Oh, I
the Ring
see.
portal and get the information, stuff like that.
Okay.
So I just want to make you aware of that. That's coming. Some of the towns that use it in our immediate surrounding area, Ansonia, Orange, Derby, North Haven, East Haven, everybody's kind of jumping on board. It's no cost.
There's no cost?
No cost at all to the
To
town.
the police department.
To the police department. It's free to law enforcement and all strictly anonymous and voluntary, so.
That got your attention.
Yeah, right?
Otherwise, I wouldn't have brought it up. And that's another, under my report.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the report of the chief?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Thank you, Chief. Next item on the agenda is new business, discussion of meeting location. Can we table that to the next meeting?
Sure.
It's not necessary yet.
Sounds good.
Moving on to personal matters, dispatcher update.
First, our newest dispatcher, as you recall, Leslie Rivera, she got hired in January. She started the end of January, the 27th. She's currently in training, and she's been assigned to different shifts. She's completed a bunch of her training, the collect training. I believe she scored, that was the first class she went in, and she scored in the 90s on that. She just completed her emergency EMD training. She's slated to go to the emergency fire dispatch training in Waterbury at the end of the month. And then in April, she'll be doing her statewide telecommunicator training certification. But she presented a good attitude. She seems to fit right in with everyone there. She's progressing well, and so all positive feedback for her.
Are you
A
at
few
full strength?
letters of commendation on that.
Are you at full strength at
This-
dispatch?
At dispatch, we'll be at full strength once she's cut loose,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, we're at full strength with 6. We had recently issued some letters of commendation to personnel for 3 separate incidents. The first one was to Officer Matthew Lima, and that was in regards to the burglary at the Wizards Country Club that I mentioned earlier. He went there on a suspicious activity complaint and actually located 2 people that were trying to break in the back there and was able to detain them and make an arrest on that. The other one was a letter of commendation for Officer Scott Prentice and letters of recognition for Sergeant R.J. Scott, Officer Matt Iannucci, and Officer John Lally. And that all had to do with an incident on January 18th at like 2:15 in the morning. Officer Prentice observed a stolen car on Rimmon Road. He didn't stop it. He tried to, tactically follow it for a bit to alert the other guys until they got in the area. The car kind of knew that they were onto it, but they ended up going down Wepawag Road, Button Ball area in there, and they all bailed out and left the car. And shortly thereafter, after a couple hours, they were able to make arrest of all 4 occupants of that car. And it was also a car had been stolen out of Camden, but Was also involved, I believe, in some robberies out there. There was some evidence from some other crimes and that. And that's, my point is stressing for all these car break-ins that we've been having. A lot of these people that are involved with those, they've been finding in the area, other area towns, that they're all connected to more violent crimes. That this is just part of their little kind of routine, but it doesn't stop there. We're just taking those change out of people's cars and so on and so forth. So even in the middle of the night, they're not nobody to be taken for granted, to say the least. So kudos to those guys for that. And then there was a third one, a letter of commendation for ISU, Sergeant Capiello, Detective Monaco, Detective Luzzi, and that also went to Special Agent Lisa McNamara from the FBI and Detective Lindsay Valcourt from the State Police Central District Major Crime, and that had to do subsequent to the Rimmon Road homicide back in 2018. They were able to combine their efforts and solve a drug-related robbery and that spanned a couple towns, and then also there was assault involved with that, and they were able to track one of the people involved across the country, and that's making an arrest on a few individuals with that, and their actual sentencing date is just coming up in the near future. It got postponed a couple times. So kudos to all of those involved with that. I'll bring that to your attention. And the last topic I had under personnel was the patrol vacancies that we talked about a few times now. So at the last meeting we had in January, I brought up that we still had 2 vacant patrol positions, and the hiring process for those was subsequently tabled. And the chairman was going to discuss the funding on that with the finance director. Since then, we didn't have a meeting last month, but since then the town's budget review process for the fiscal year 21 budget commenced, and at the Board of Selectmen meeting, it was recommended. The Board of Selectmen voted their recommendation to the Board of Finance that both of those 2 vacant patrol positions be eliminated. I discussed my concerns with that with Rob, and I also discussed them with the first selectman, and I also talked to the chairman of the Finance Board on that too, and expressed my concerns with that. We all know that back in 2018 we restructured and we reduced our administrative staff by 1 year and a half ago, and the whole intention of that was to get more boots on the ground by replacing the administrative position and putting a switch over to the patrol side. Now we're a year and a half into that, and we lost that lieutenant's position, and we still have 2 vacancies that we never filled for different reasons. And one was associated with the funding for the school resource officer at Beecher Road School. We don't want to get in a predicament with him not being funded there and funding for him coming back here. So I get that. In reality, in a period of 2 years, if this all happens and if we eliminate 2 more positions, we'll be going down from a department of 26 that we had been historically for years, at least budgeted for that, down to a department of 23. And that's way below where I feel we need to be, and way below what we ever were at, and way below what professional manpower study and management study I'd recommend that we be at. And a couple of the concerns I had with some of the comments that were made, I just want to clarify at least my position and see what the board feels about that. But one of the things that was said was that the police department didn't take a look at its managerial staff and structure, but certainly that wasn't the case, because we did take a look at it, and that's why it was decided to change the structure. So we did do that, and we made the necessary adjustments and realignments that we had to make to accommodate that. And in fact, the town entered into another agreement with the union, memorandum of agreement with the union, to realign those assignments and to realign working hours for the supervisors to accommodate that. So it's not that we never looked at the managerial side, because we certainly did. and there were comments made that we have more managerial oversight than anyone else, that you wouldn't find anywhere else. And, I say to that, with the elimination of the lieutenant's position and the vacancy, like I said a couple minutes ago, our staffing is well below what it ever has been before, or will be well below what it ever has been before. And also contrary to what, professional studies have recommended and what levels we had operated at for years, and those levels were proven to be efficient and successful. And I just don't think that they should just be cut out strictly based on financial concerns. I get the economy, and I know there's need to tighten the best we could, but I feel that we've done our share. But I don't think it's the point that we want to start having to question, our operations and public safety and officer safety, and being able to continue to provide the same services that the residents expect and deserve, and fulfill all of our obligations of what we're tasked with doing. It also came up about IT services, that we should just reassign people to out of IT if we need them somewhere else. Well, that hasn't been an option. Back in 1999 or so, they took a dispatcher out of dispatch and decided we were going to have a full-time IT person. So they made a dispatcher IT person and hired a dispatcher to replace the person. And that was fine, and that worked up until, I think it was about 2012, that person retired. And so now here's the police department was left with nobody to do IT work, but we had to keep functioning. So in 2012, they reassigned those duties and took them away from the dispatcher and gave it to a sergeant. So for whatever reasons, that's been in place since 2012 for, so 8 years now. And since that time, those assignments, as far as IT goes, has taken on a life of their own. In 1999, we didn't have MDTs, we didn't have body cameras, we didn't have in-car videos, we didn't have any of the technology that we have now, license plate reader, everything else. And couple that with our infrastructure and everything, granted in July, hopefully we'll start, that's going to start being upgraded. But over all the years, that stuff is always failing, and it needs a lot of attention, to say the least. So with that said, we all agree that it would be best if we could get a trained IT person in here, a professional to offset some of the demands that are tasked with the sergeant to free them up more. I think we're all good with that. But up until now, we never had the funds for it. And when some funding changes were offered, with the Amity thing, we waited, we did it, we tried. It's not working out. So in the meantime now, we have from now to July, and we have to keep, the operation running, and so we're doing the best we could with what we have. So that's where we're at with that. We're trying to do the best we could with the staff we have to keep everything running efficiently, but to reduce our staff by another 2 people and get us down to 23 from 26, I just think that's a tremendous cut when we've already made a significant cut already. And I just I have concerns about it, and I hope the board would too. That I don't know what kind of an impact that might have on safety and operations. We see the crime around us, and we've had 2 homicides in an 18-month span. We just talked about the bank robberies. We had 2 bank robberies in 2 months, and everything else. And everybody wants, an officer here, an officer at this church, an officer at that church. Have somebody at the schools, be everywhere. And we're doing the best we could with what we have. And even when we increase, we put 2 school resource officers, much needed in both schools. I agree with that. We put the school resource officers over there, but we never increased our staff. We're just getting the job done, and we never complain about it. We just get it done. But to cut the staff, I just have concerns about that. I just want to bring that to the board's attention. We have to be aware of that as we go forward. And, with that said, no matter what happens when the budget shakes out, we're here. We'll do the best we could with the resources we have. But I hope that we don't lose 2 more positions and go all the way down to that 23 from 26.
Because that's just, in a short time like that, it's a big cut, and we have a young department, day shift, we have the veterans, and we're good. But evenings and midnights, a lot of these guys are young guys. There's not a lot of veteran officers working those shifts, and I just think it's important that we stay staffed. We're busy. Our call volume up. We're going to pass something like, I think we're on track to hit 28,000 calls if we stay at the track where we're at now. So cutting staff is something we just really have to be aware of, and I'm just looking for the board's support in helping us maintain whatever we determine adequate staffing levels.
Thank you. Frank, I have a question. Has the population changed in Woodbridge in the past decade?
I don't believe so. It's always been around, around the same amount.
Yeah, it's not really.
8,000-ish or something?
No, it's over 9,000.
Yes, it's almost 10.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But it really hasn't changed dramatically, no.
No.
Uh-huh.
Frank, when was the last staffing study that was done? How old was that?
2002. And it was readdressed a little bit a few years after that, but no formal study.
So that may make sense to have that done again.
Right. And those were the
How
levels
much
from
did they
them,
cost?
No idea.
How much did the staffing studies cost?
Yeah, no idea.
The rules of engagement have changed. There were five employees, there were 5 people, from other departments that were not, so other departments lost people also that weren't going to be replaced.
Everybody had to deal with it.
Everybody, and,
But not public safety. Not
no, I
public safety.
understand that. I'm just saying, what I'm saying is, the rules of engagement have changed, and it's not going to get easier as you go forward. And that's the problem we have this time. The grand list is not increasing, expenses are not decreasing. Now, they were able to take, he's on the board of finance, $500,000 they saved here. Amity Regional is up, $1 million? So, you take a look at our budget, 2/3 of it plus is education, and we keep on trying to squeeze that third that we're in, okay? Public safety is in it, fire is in it, public works is in it. And, we're stretched beyond that, how much you can squeeze that. So, we're well aware of what's going on from.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just our calls for service are going up and up every year. They're going up.
I think that the chairman made a good recommendation.
Yeah, right.
So I think that's where we should begin. That's where we should begin.
Right. Then we can, whatever direction we go, we can make an informed.
Because you're going to be facing it next budget. I tell you, to think we're not going to be facing it next budget, forget about it. You're going to be facing it.
Right.
Nothing is changing to bring more income into this town, to increase the grand list of this town.
It's not gonna happen.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
The one thing they could have done it, they don't even want to bring forward for a vote, so.
Right. But in the meantime, I get all that, but in the meantime, we're tasked with making sure that we have enough people here to run the operation, and
So I suggest,
it's not done.
the chairman made a suggestion that we get on it.
Yeah. Good.
And the other option is looking at the resources that we have, and does it make sense to reallocate where people are assigned? For example, if patrol is desperately needed and the ISU unit can save a body, does it make sense to transfer someone from there to patrol? I'm just throwing an idea. Obviously, we'll gain a sergeant if we get someone to take over IT. So that's an issue with supervision. I'm just thinking about working with what we have until we can get this study done and let them determine what they recommend.
Right. Well, I think until we get the study done, I don't know any way more efficiently that we can run it now. Our problem with ISU is that we're trying to staff that thing and run it 24/7, so we have someone on call. So we've always had 2 detectives and a sergeant for like the last 10, 12 years and like that. And we had a lieutenant that would come in, be able to come in on call for that, which we don't. But the problem is, so we still have the two detectives in there, but the sergeant is overseeing them, but he's also now overseeing patrol 2 days a week or 3 days a week, depending on. So everybody's filling in. Is what I'm
No, I
trying to
understand,
say.
but you have to determine which is your priority.
Right.
Does it make sense to put that person in patrol, or do you need more in ISU? I mean, I'm just suggesting, where's the problem?
I mean, as it is now, Frank and I, we cover ISU when they have to take, if they have to take vacation, they have to take time off, they have to be on call. I mean, so there's been weekends that either Frank or myself have to be readily available to come in and assist them. Because a lot of the work that ISU does isn't done by one officer. It has to be done by two. And you know, you're well aware of that. I mean, so you do
Yes.
an investigation. I can't go and interview somebody by myself. It's got to be two detectives that have to do the interview. And it's just, we don't have the manpower. We don't have the manpower to send people to school so they can get certified as an accident.
I'm just suggesting that may be something to look at is, you know, does the deployment need to change if you have an immediate concern? I mean, just because we've done something for 10 years, we may have to alter
No,
that,
absolutely.
if that works.
Right,
But when
we can talk about, but we have altered it, and right now it's.
It was just a
because
suggestion,
everybody's stepping up and covering, so there's always somebody, whether it's the deputy and myself, or the detectives, or the sergeants, not even one sergeant, but all the sergeants will say, look, we gotta make this thing work, and somebody needs to be on call, so if you're not going to be here, everybody's stepping up, we're making it work.
Right, we
I'm just
fully
saying, to cut it
understand
shorter
that.
than that's the concern I have, yeah.
What is the difference in salary between an IT person and a police officer? And it's a sergeant who's doing IT?
Amongst other things, yes.
Yeah.
So has anyone run those numbers?
I'm sure that,
Because that would be helpful when we're thinking about reallocating resources and stuff.
But we still shouldn't have a sergeant doing IT. I mean, that's kind of crazy. We need the supervision. So we have an experienced officer. He should be supervising patrolmen, not
Right.
doing IT.
Exactly.
But the problem is we weren't given that money to do that.
So
So
the chief and I discussed that the other day.
Right.
That was the part that came up. You know,
Yeah.
could we, find that out to an officer? But you know, we're giving, I mean, sensitive information in a lot of cases to a patrolman. Not necessarily, trust them, but you want a lot of these passwords and everything. You want to protect them, and that's why we have one person, and he is a supervisor. That was the decision that was made back in
That's how
2012 that you would have a
Yes,
supervisor doing that type of work.
Why is that?
It's not a patrolman's job. It is a supervisory
I
job
know that.
because they're dealing with a lot of the classified information that comes out of this department. And I don't want you to think that we're saying that the officers can't handle that. But that's a position you'd have to take an officer, and you have to put a lot of trust into what information you're giving. Why does the chief and the deputy chief lock their door at night? I mean, it's just.
well, I think with the IT end of it,
You're right,
and
but
I
you
get
have IT people in corporations and in banks and in other areas and in the government handling data like this, like that, with passwords and everything else every day of the week. And it doesn't have to be an officer of the law to do that. It could be an IT person doing that.
Oh, no, but you're paying them to have that responsibility.
Again,
We've looked into that. I mean,
well, I think we're moving on the IT side of it.
Yeah.
Let's give it a shot. I think the town's they tried something, it didn't work. At least we tried something. We tried the Amity, and worked. And now we're going to try something to make it even more efficient. So let's give it a shot. And
Yeah, I
I think
agree.
we're going in the right direction. And what else could we do until we do a study?
But it's not just the money. I mean, even if we're paying a sergeant, and we're paying an IT person the salary of a sergeant, which is a lot of money. My concern is that's a sergeant that should be supervising officers, not necessarily doing IT work.
But he's not just doing IT work. Now that the lieutenant's been eliminated, he's helping with training. He is supervising. He's doing all the sergeants are doing a whole bunch of things. Like even, we say the detective sergeant that he's just doing the detective work. He has a whole list of stuff that he's doing. So that's the stuff that we have to maybe, put out there. Everybody's doing a lot of different jobs, which is fine, it's good. But it's not just IT, but somebody has to be the coordinator, and that's what he's doing.
But a sergeant shouldn't be doing IT. They should be doing other tasks.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, this was just something that you kind of inherited. It's been in
I'm not
place for
faulting you. I'm
years.
just saying,
So
I should
gotta
fix
go
that.
from there.
most departments, it is a supervisor.
What was
They're
the
lieutenants and
proposal?
captains that are doing it.
What was the proposal of the chairman that you were alluding to?
To have a staffing study. We did one in 2002. We haven't
So
done
18
one.
years later.
Oh,
That was me.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought you were talking
And
about.
he's
that
talking
could
about me.
include the sort of figuring out the IT person.
The whole
Yeah,
package.
I mean, it's probably worth finding out how much that costs, what it entails. I mean, 18 years is a
I
long
think
time
we
ago.
need one.
Frank, I'm not going to deny you have challenges.
The what?
You have challenges.
Oh, yeah, no.
Everyone in the town
We're okay with that. I'm just saying, in the meantime, as we work through those challenges,
So that's
we just need your support that we keep the operation running as efficiently as we could. We can't
drop the ball
Well, I
while
think
we
you have
figure
our
out what
support
challenges.
because it was,
You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. I don't want to cut ourselves short and try to
we were
have to
there,
fill them in.
we were there to devise the plan, so I think you have our support.
Yeah,
I mean, we sort
Right.
of, we're the ones who came up with this,
right.
correct?
Correct. So no, and we have your support, and I'm willing to, so we don't
Right?
cut it anymore, allow us to implement the plan and keep it,
We
make it as
hear ya.
efficient as we could. That's
We
what-
hear
Yeah.
you. You are heard.
So, the next item is executive session. Is there, it's a safety and security. Is there any more exacting issue you can articulate
No,
in
just
that?
the one from a couple months ago. And,
Can you just give a little more definition of that without getting into detail?
so it was the one with, it was at the houses on, it was at the synagogue and
Okay.
request for
Oh,
a
that's
scarecrow
right.
patch.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
So is there a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Joe?